This is Craziest HOA Moments. The package vanished, and she acted like I did it. Colleen Harper stormed up my walkway holding an open mailer and screamed that I stole it and she was calling it in as an HOA incident. "I am not here to be your friend," she announced, waving the torn envelope so close I could see the crease where someone had ripped it open and resealed it badly. I work security for a private office park in Sacramento, so I know what staged evidence looks like, and this was it. She stood on my concrete step in a black blazer and a gray bucket hat, her chin-length blonde bob swinging as she jabbed a finger at my chest and told me the Riverstone Neighborhood Association was going to fine me, suspend my mailbox access, and possibly involve law enforcement if I did not admit what I had done. I asked her calmly what exactly she thought I stole. She snapped that I knew exactly what, that the tracking showed delivery to my address, and that she had already filed a formal complaint with the board. I said I would be happy to review any camera footage, and that is when she lost it. She screamed that only the HOA decides what is shared, that I had no right to demand anything, and that my attitude was proof enough. I noticed her hand trembling as she held the mailer, and I realized she was not angry because I stole something. She was angry because I asked a question. The envelope had my street number printed on the label, but the name was hers, Colleen Harper, and the return address was a tool supply company I had never heard of. I pointed that out. She told me I was twisting facts, that I clearly intercepted her delivery and tried to cover it up, and that she had witnesses who saw me near the mailbox cluster yesterday afternoon. I work until 6, so that was impossible, but she did not care. She said the complaint was filed, the board would review it at the next meeting, and I should expect a courtesy notice in the next 48 hours. Then she said it. "I can make this official with one phone call." She pulled out her phone and held it up like a prop, her thumb hovering over the screen. I told her to go ahead. She did not call anyone. Instead, she turned and walked back down my driveway, shouting over her shoulder that I had until tomorrow to return what I took or she would escalate. I stood there holding my door open, watching her march toward the mailbox cluster where 2 neighbors were checking their mail. She stopped, waved the envelope, and started talking loud enough for me to hear. She told them I had stolen her package, that she caught me, and that the HOA was investigating. One of them glanced at me. The other nodded and kept sorting mail. I felt my stomach drop. This was not just a complaint. This was a public smear campaign, and it was happening in real time. I moved to Riverstone 6 months ago because the rent was reasonable and the commute to my job was under 20 minutes. The HOA name is printed on every sign at the entrance, every newsletter, every violation notice, and Colleen Harper's name is on half of them as the pool committee chair. The stakes here are simple. If my neighbors think I am a thief, my lease renewal is going to be a nightmare, and the landlord is already looking for an excuse to raise the rent or not renew. I cannot afford to move again. I went inside, locked the door, and pulled up my bank statements to see if anything weird had been charged. Nothing. I checked my delivery history. Nothing from that tool company. I took a photo of the mailer she had been waving and zoomed in. The label was printed, not handwritten, and the address line said my unit number but her name. That should have been my first clue, but I was still catching up. The next morning, I found a notice taped to my door. It was on Riverstone Neighborhood Association letterhead, and it accused me of theft of property, interference with mail delivery, and creating a hostile environment. The fine was $250, due within 10 days, and if I did not pay, the board reserved the right to suspend access to community amenities, including the mailbox cluster, the pool, and the gym. It also said I was required to attend a compliance hearing in 2 weeks. The notice was signed by Colleen Harper, but the signature looked printed, not handwritten. I folded it, took a photo, and sent it to my landlord with a short message explaining what happened. He replied an hour later saying the HOA had already contacted him, that they claimed I was under investigation, and that he needed to see proof I was not involved before he could defend me. That was the moment I realized I was on my own. I called the management company that runs Riverstone and asked to speak to someone about the complaint. The receptionist put me on hold for 8 minutes, then told me the file was under review and I should wait for the hearing. I asked if I could see the evidence Colleen submitted. She said only board members and involved parties could access complaint files and that I would receive copies at the hearing. I asked if I could submit my own evidence now. She said I could, but it would not be reviewed until the hearing unless the board requested it early. I thanked her and hung up. Then I walked to the mailbox cluster. The cluster sits in a covered alcove near the front gate, 12 boxes in 2 rows, each with a small key lock. Mine is in the top row, 3rd from the left. I checked it. Empty. I checked the ground around the boxes. Nothing. Then I saw it. A sealed evidence bag, clear plastic with a red zip tie, sitting on top of the trash can next to the alcove. Inside was a small item, maybe a keychain or a USB drive, I could not tell. The bag had a handwritten label with no name, just a case number that meant nothing to me. I took a photo. I did not touch it. I looked up and saw the camera. It was mounted on the corner post of the alcove, a small black dome with a blinking red light. I waved at it. Then I went home and started making a list. That afternoon, Colleen showed up again. This time she had a clipboard and a woman I did not recognize. Someone in a Riverstone polo shirt with a laminated badge clipped to her belt. Colleen knocked, and when I opened the door, she announced that this was a surprise inspection under HOA Covenant Section 12, Subsection 4, and that I was required to allow entry or face an additional fine. I asked to see the covenant. She handed me a printed page, single-sided with dense text and no highlighted sections. I scanned it. Section 12 covered exterior maintenance and landscaping compliance. Nothing about interior inspections. I pointed that out. She said I was misreading it, that subsection 4 allowed board representatives to inspect for health and safety violations if a complaint was filed, and that theft of property qualified. I asked who filed the complaint. She said she did. I asked if she could inspect her own complaint. She said the board approved it. I asked for the approval in writing. She said it was verbal. The woman with the badge stepped forward and said she was just there to witness, that she did not have an opinion either way, and that this would go faster if I cooperated. I told them I was not letting anyone in without a written approval from the board and a witness of my choosing. Colleen's face went red. She said I was obstructing an official investigation, that she would note my refusal in the file, and that it would count against me at the hearing. Then she turned to the witness and said, "You saw him refuse, right?" The woman hesitated, then nodded. Colleen made a note on her clipboard, ripped off the top sheet, and handed it to me. It was a violation notice for obstruction, another $250 fine, and a note that said continued refusal may result in lease termination proceedings. I took the paper, thanked them for stopping by, and closed the door. My hands were shaking. I had just been fined $500, and I had not stolen anything. I called the management company again. This time I got a different receptionist. I explained what happened and asked if surprise inspections were legal under Riverstone covenants. She said she would have to check with the property manager and call me back. She never did. I sent an email with photos of both notices and the covenant page. No response. That night I went to the Riverstone Community Facebook group and searched for Colleen Harper's name. 17 posts came up. Most were her announcing pool maintenance schedules, reminding residents about trash day, and posting photos of covenant violations with addresses blurred out. 3 posts were complaints from residents saying she had fined them for things that were not in the covenants, that she refused to provide documentation, and that the board never responded to appeals. One post from 4 months ago said Colleen had accused a resident of stealing pool furniture, filed a police report, and then quietly dropped it when the furniture turned up in the storage shed. No apology, no correction. I screenshotted everything. The next day, I got a call from the tow company that services Riverstone. The dispatcher said my car was flagged for removal due to expired registration. I told him my registration was current and offered to send a photo. He said Colleen Harper had submitted a request with a photo showing my plate and a note that said the tags were not visible. I asked if I could see the photo. He said it was internal. I asked if he could send someone to verify in person before towing. He said they were scheduling it for tomorrow morning and I should move the car off property if I wanted to avoid the fee. I asked where I was supposed to park. He said that was not his problem. I hung up, walked outside, and checked my car. The registration sticker was right there, bright and visible on the rear plate. I took 3 photos from different angles. Then I called the tow company back, got the same dispatcher, and told him I had proof the tags were valid. He sighed and said he would put the request on hold for 24 hours, but if Colleen called again, they would proceed. I asked for his name. He gave me a first name only. I thanked him and added it to my list. That afternoon, Colleen posted in the neighborhood chat. She did not mention me by name, but she said there was an ongoing theft investigation, that residents should be vigilant, and that anyone with information should contact her directly. 3 people replied asking for details. She said she could not share specifics, but that the individual involved had been uncooperative and that the board was taking it seriously. 2 more people liked the post. I felt my chest tighten. I typed a reply saying I was happy to cooperate with any legitimate investigation and that I had asked multiple times for evidence and had been refused. I hit send. Colleen replied within a minute. She said I was trying to intimidate witnesses, that my behavior was noted, and that I should direct all communication through official channels. Someone else commented asking what I supposedly stole. Colleen said she could not discuss it publicly, but that it involved mail fraud and theft of personal property. My phone buzzed. A neighbor I had never spoken to sent me a private message asking if I was the one Colleen was talking about. I did not reply. The compliance hearing was supposed to be in 2 weeks, but Colleen moved it up. The notice came via email at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday. The hearing was now scheduled for Saturday morning at 10 a.m. in the clubhouse. Attendance was mandatory. Failure to attend would result in automatic acceptance of all findings and penalties. I replied asking why the date was changed. No response. I forwarded the email to my landlord. He replied saying he could not attend and that I should handle it. I called the management company and left a voicemail. No call back. I spent Thursday and Friday gathering everything I had. Photos of the mailer, the notices, the covenant page, my car registration, the evidence bag by the mailbox, my work schedule showing I was not home when Colleen claimed I was near the mailbox, and screenshots of the Facebook posts. I printed it all and put it in a binder. Then I called the one person I thought might help. His name is Marcus, and he works security at the front gate on weekends. We have talked a few times when I come home late. He is older, maybe 60, and he has worked contract security in Sacramento for 30 years. I told him what was happening. He listened without interrupting. Then he said Colleen had been trying to get gate logs for the past week, claiming she needed them for the investigation. He said he told her he could not release logs without a formal request through the management company. She got angry, said she was a board member and that he worked for the HOA and he should just print them. He refused. She threatened to have him replaced. He told her to go ahead. Then he said something that changed everything. He said Colleen had been coming and going through the gate at odd hours, sometimes twice in one night, and that she always parked near the mailbox cluster when she did. He said he did not think much of it until she started pushing for logs. He said if I wanted, he could pull the gate log for the past month and highlight her entries. I said yes. Marcus printed the log Friday night. It was 8 pages, single-spaced, every entry and exit for the past 30 days. He highlighted Colleen's entries in yellow. There were 47. Most were during the day, but 11 were between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. He also highlighted 3 entries where her exit time was more than 2 hours after her entry time with no clear reason. He said she never went to the pool or the gym that late and the clubhouse was locked. I asked where she went. He said the only thing open that late near the gate was the mailbox cluster and the trash enclosure. I thanked him and added the log to my binder. Then I asked if he would be willing to attend the hearing as a witness. He said he would, but only if I formally requested him through the management company. I said I would try. Saturday morning, I walked to the clubhouse at 9:45. The parking lot was half full. I saw Colleen's car in the front row, a white SUV with a Riverstone board member placard on the dash. I parked in the back and walked in. The clubhouse is a single-story building with a main room, a kitchenette, and 2 small offices. The main room had folding chairs set up in rows facing a long table. 3 people sat at the table. Colleen was in the middle. A man in his 50s sat to her left, and a woman in her 40s sat to her right. I did not recognize either of them. Colleen saw me and smiled. It was not a friendly smile. She said, "Glad you could make it," and gestured to the front row. I sat down. 2 other residents were there, both sitting in the back. I did not know them either. Colleen called the meeting to order at 10 sharp. She said this was a compliance hearing under Riverstone covenants to address allegations of theft, mail fraud, and obstruction filed against me. She said the board had reviewed the complaint, the evidence, and my lack of cooperation, and that today I would have a chance to respond. She said the board would then deliberate and issue a finding. If the finding was sustained, penalties would be enforced immediately. She said I had 10 minutes to present my case. I stood up, walked to the front, and opened my binder. Then the door opened. Marcus walked in, still in his security uniform. He nodded at me and took a seat in the back row. Colleen's smile disappeared. She said, "This is a closed hearing, only involved parties and board members." Marcus said, "I was invited as a witness," and held up a copy of my email request. Colleen looked at the other 2 board members. The man shrugged. The woman said, "Fine, but he does not speak unless asked." Marcus sat down. I started with the mailer. I showed the photo and pointed out that it had Colleen's name, not mine, and that the return address was a company I had never ordered from. I said I had checked my bank records and delivery history, and there was no record of any purchase. Colleen interrupted. She said the tracking number showed delivery to my address, and that I must have intercepted it after it arrived. I asked her to show the tracking number. She said it was in the file. I asked to see the file. She said I would get a copy after the hearing. The man to her left leaned forward and said, "Do you have the tracking number or not?" Colleen hesitated, then said, "I have it at home. I did not bring it today." The man sighed. I moved on. I showed the 2 violation notices and the covenant page. I explained that Section 12 did not authorize interior inspections, that Colleen had claimed verbal board approval but refused to provide it in writing, and that the obstruction fine was issued without due process. The woman to Colleen's right looked at Colleen and said, "Did we approve an inspection?" Colleen said, "We discussed it informally, and you both agreed it was necessary." The woman said, "I do not remember that." The man said, "I do not either." Colleen's face went red. She said, "It was during the pool budget meeting last month. We talked about enforcement procedures." The man said, "That was about noise complaints, not inspections." Colleen did not respond. I moved on. I showed the gate log. I explained that Marcus had provided it, that it showed Colleen entering and exiting the community at unusual hours, often near the mailbox cluster, and that her behavior matched the timeline of the alleged theft. Colleen stood up. She said, "That log is confidential, you had no right to request it, and Marcus had no right to release it." Marcus stood up. He said, "The log is a security record, not a private document, and I released it in response to a formal witness request filed through the management company." Colleen said, "You are lying, I never saw that request." Marcus pulled out a printed email. He said, "I sent it to the property manager Wednesday, and she confirmed receipt." Colleen sat down. The man and woman at the table looked at each other. The man said, "Can we take a 5-minute recess?" Colleen said no. The man said, "I am taking a recess," and stood up. The woman followed. Colleen stayed at the table, staring at me. During the recess, Marcus walked over and handed me another printout. He said, "I pulled this morning. Thought you might need it." It was a gate fob activity report, showing which fob was used for each entry. Colleen's fob number appeared on every late-night entry. He said, "She is the only one with that fob. It is registered to her unit." I thanked him and added it to the binder. When the board members came back, the man said, "We want to see the original complaint file." Colleen said, "I have it at home." The man said, "Then we will reconvene when you bring it." Colleen said, "That is not necessary, the evidence is clear." The woman said, "No, it is not, and we are not issuing findings without reviewing the full file." Colleen looked at me, then at Marcus, then back at the board. She said, "Fine, I will bring it Monday and we will reconvene then." The man said, "No, bring it now, we will wait." Colleen stood up, grabbed her clipboard and walked out. She came back 20 minutes later with a file cart. It was one of those rolling wire carts, 2 shelves, stacked with folders and binders. She wheeled it to the table and started pulling files. The man said, "Just the complaint file." Colleen said, "This is all related." The woman said, "We asked for the complaint file, not your entire archive." Colleen ignored her and kept pulling folders. Then the cart tipped. It happened fast. She had leaned too hard on one side, and the whole thing went over. Files spilled across the floor, papers scattered, binders slid under chairs. And in the middle of it all, a sealed evidence bag fell out of one of the folders. It was clear plastic, red zip tie with a handwritten label. Inside was a small USB drive. I recognized it immediately. It was the same bag I had seen by the mailbox cluster. The man picked up the bag. He read the label out loud. Unit 14, Recovered Evidence, Gate Access Investigation. He looked at Colleen. He said, "Why do you have this?" Colleen said, "I was holding it for safekeeping." The woman said, "Safekeeping from what?" Colleen did not answer. Marcus stepped forward. He said, "That bag was logged as missing from the security office 2 weeks ago." Colleen said, "I found it by the mailbox." Marcus said, "Then why did you not return it?" Colleen said, "I was going to." The man opened the bag. Inside was a USB drive and a key ring. He held up the key ring. He said, "These are master keys." Colleen said, "I do not know how those got in there." The woman said, "This hearing is over. We are calling the property manager." The property manager arrived 30 minutes later. Her name is Angela, and she runs the contract for 3 HOAs in the area, including Riverstone. She walked in, looked at the spilled files, looked at Colleen and said, "What happened?" The man explained. Angela asked to see the evidence bag. She looked at the label, then at Marcus. She said, "Is this the missing security bag?" Marcus said yes. Angela turned to Colleen. She said, "Why do you have evidence from a security investigation?" Colleen said, "I already explained, I found it." Angela said, "And you did not think to return it?" Colleen said, "I was busy." Angela said, "You are a board member, you do not get to hold evidence." Colleen said, "This community has standards, and I was trying to protect them." Angela said, "By hiding evidence and filing fake complaints?" Colleen said, "They are not fake." Angela said, "Then show me the tracking number for the mailer." Colleen did not respond. Angela pulled out her phone and made a call. She said, "I need the full complaint file for Riverstone Unit 22. Yes, the theft complaint filed by Colleen Harper." She listened, then said, "Print everything and bring it to the clubhouse." She hung up and looked at me. She said, "I am sorry this happened. We are going to sort it out." Then she looked at the 2 board members. She said, "I am recommending an independent audit of all complaints filed by Miss Harper in the past year." The man said, "Agreed." The woman said, "Same." Colleen said, "You cannot do that." Angela said, "I can, and I am." Then she looked at Marcus. She said, "Can you pull gate logs for the past 6 months?" Marcus said, "Already done," and handed her a folder. Angela opened it, flipped through a few pages, and looked at Colleen. She said, "You have been entering the property late at night multiple times a week for months. What were you doing?" Colleen said, "That is personal." Angela said, "Not when it involves HOA property." Then Angela opened one of the spilled binders. It was labeled Pool Budget, but inside were printouts of delivery notifications, all addressed to different residents, all marked as delivered to the mailbox cluster. Angela held it up. She said, "Why do you have these?" Colleen said, "I was tracking deliveries for the board." Angela said, "The board does not track individual deliveries." Colleen said, "We were considering a package theft prevention program." Angela said, "There is no record of that in any meeting minutes." Colleen did not respond. Angela flipped through more pages. She found a stack of identical complaint forms, all printed on the same template, all with different names typed in, all signed with the same printed signature. She held them up. She said, "Did you file all of these?" Colleen said, "Residents filed them." Angela said, "Then why are they all in your handwriting?" Colleen said, "I typed them for them." Angela said, "That is not how complaints work." Angela set the forms down and looked at me. She said, "I need to see your evidence." I handed her the binder. She flipped through it, reading quietly. She stopped at the gate log. She compared it to the delivery notifications. She said, "These match." She looked at Colleen. She said, "You were at the mailbox cluster the same nights these packages were reported stolen." Colleen said, "Coincidence." Angela said, 16 times is not a coincidence. Then she opened another folder from the spilled cart. Inside were photos. Photos of packages, opened envelopes, small tools, pool supplies, and a cash box. Angela held up the cash box photo. She said, "This is from the clubhouse office. It was reported stolen 3 months ago." Colleen said, "I found it." Angela said, "Where?" Colleen did not answer. Angela said, "I am calling the police." Colleen stood up. She said, "You are overreacting. This is a misunderstanding." Angela said, "Sit down." Colleen said, "I can make this official with one phone call." Angela said, "Make it." Colleen pulled out her phone. She unlocked it, opened her contacts, and froze. Angela said, "Who are you calling?" Colleen said, "The board president." Angela said, "You are the pool chair, not the president, and he is standing right there," and pointed at the man at the table. Colleen looked at him. He said, "I never authorized any of this." Colleen put her phone down. Angela said, "The police are on their way. You are going to wait here until they arrive." The deputy showed up 20 minutes later. He was young, maybe late 20s, and he walked in with a notepad and a calm expression that said he had seen this kind of thing before. Angela explained the situation. The deputy asked to see the evidence bag, the gate logs, the complaint forms, and the photos. He spent 10 minutes reviewing everything. Then he looked at Colleen. He said, "Did you take these items?" Colleen said, "I do not have to answer that." He said, "You do not, but it will make this easier." Colleen said, "I want a lawyer." The deputy said, "That is your right," and asked her to step outside. She did. He followed. They stood in the parking lot for another 10 minutes. I watched through the window. Colleen was talking fast, waving her hands. The deputy was writing. Then she stopped talking. He said something short. She nodded. He walked back inside. He said, "She is not being arrested today, but I am filing a report, and the case will be forwarded to investigations." He looked at me. He said, "You are not a suspect, and I am noting that in the report." He looked at Angela. He said, "I recommend you suspend her access to HOA property and documents until this is resolved." Angela said, "Already done." The deputy said, "Good," and handed me a card with a case number. He said, "If you need this for anything, reference that number." I thanked him. He left. Colleen was still in the parking lot, sitting in her car. Angela walked over and knocked on her window. Colleen rolled it down. Angela said, "You are suspended from all board duties effective immediately, and you are not allowed on HOA property except to access your own unit." Colleen said, "You cannot do that." Angela said, "I just did," and walked away. The independent audit took 2 weeks. Angela brought in a third-party compliance firm to review every complaint, fine, and enforcement action Colleen had filed in the past 18 months. The firm found 42 violations of HOA procedure, including 16 complaints that were filed without resident signatures, 9 fines that were issued without board approval, and 7 instances where evidence was either missing or fabricated. They also found a pattern of late-night gate entries that matched reported thefts at the mailbox cluster, the pool supply closet, and the clubhouse office. The audit report recommended immediate removal from the board, restitution to affected residents, and a formal complaint to the management company that triggered discipline. The board voted unanimously to accept the recommendations. Colleen was removed from the pool committee and banned from holding any board position for 5 years. She was required to pay back all fines she had issued without proper authorization, including the $500 she fined me. The HOA also froze enforcement actions until a neutral review was completed, and 3 other residents who had been fined by Colleen got refunds. The stolen items were recovered from a storage unit Colleen had rented under a fake name. The unit contained packages, tools, pool supplies, and the missing cash box from the clubhouse office. The vendor dispatcher who had tried to tow my car called and apologized, saying Colleen had been flagged in their system as a problem client. The management company issued a no-contact directive, meaning Colleen was not allowed to communicate with me or any other resident about HOA matters. The hearing itself became neighborhood legend. Someone recorded part of it on their phone, and the clip of Colleen waving her policy sheet upside down while Marcus pointed it out went viral in the local HOA drama groups. The moment she tried to intimidate Angela and got shut down was replayed at least a dozen times in the group chat. The rumor died in real time as people watched the proof. Colleen's timeline was proven false with timestamps from the gate log, and the vendor who had pressured me sent a formal apology letter and a credit for future services. The final piece came 3 weeks later. I got a check in the mail from the Riverstone Neighborhood Association for $500, the full amount of the fines Colleen had issued. Attached was a letter from Angela apologizing for the experience and confirming that my record had been cleared. The letter also said the board had voted to implement new complaint procedures, including mandatory witness signatures, board review within 72 hours, and a public log of all enforcement actions. Marcus was promoted to head of security for the property management company and got a pay bump. He still works the gate on weekends, and we still talk when I come home late. Colleen tried to fight the findings. She hired a lawyer and filed an appeal with the management company, claiming the audit was biased and that Angela had overstepped her authority. The management company reviewed the appeal and denied it within a week. Colleen then tried to run for a different board position in a neighboring HOA, but word had spread, and she was rejected during the application review. Last I heard, she moved out of Riverstone entirely and bought a condo in a non-HOA building on the other side of Sacramento. The neighborhood chat turned around fast. The same people who had liked Colleen's smear post came back and apologized, saying they did not realize what was happening. A few of them asked how I stayed so calm through the whole thing. I told them I work security, and the first rule is never let someone see you rattled, because that is when they win. The second rule is document everything, because the truth does not care about volume, it cares about proof. The third rule is know when to call in help, and Marcus was the best help I could have asked for. The tool pouch Colleen claimed was stolen? It turned out it was never missing at all. It was in the trunk of a resident's car the entire time, exactly where he left it after a home repair project. Colleen had taken a photo of the empty shelf in his garage during a so-called courtesy inspection and filed a theft report to create panic and justify more invasive enforcement. When the resident found the pouch and posted about it in the neighborhood chat, Colleen deleted the original complaint from her files. But the management company had already pulled a backup copy during the audit. That was the moment everyone realized the thefts were not about missing items. They were about control, about creating fear, and about giving Colleen an excuse to operate outside the rules. The clubhouse event Colleen had tried to use as a stage for my humiliation? It happened anyway, but by then the story had flipped. Instead of being the suspect, I was the guy who exposed the real thief. People came up to me at the barbecue and thanked me for standing up to her. A few of them shared their own stories, small things Colleen had done that they never reported because they thought no one would believe them. One woman said Colleen had accused her of damaging the pool gate, fined her $100, and then never fixed the gate because it was never actually broken. Another resident said Colleen had tried to have his truck towed for parking in a guest spot overnight, claiming it was abandoned, even though he had a guest pass displayed. The pattern was clear. Colleen had been running a personal enforcement empire, and the board had either not noticed or not cared until it became undeniable. Angela told me later that the audit firm had recommended a full review of the Riverstone HOA bylaws because Colleen had exploited so many loopholes. The board agreed and hired a lawyer to rewrite the enforcement section. The new rules required 2 board members to sign off on any fine. All complaints had to include timestamps and witness contact information, and residents had the right to request a third-party mediator before any hearing. It was not perfect, but it was a start, and it would not have happened if Colleen had not pushed so hard that the system finally broke. I still live at Riverstone, my lease renewed without issue, and the landlord even apologized for doubting me. The rent went up, but not by much, and I decided the stability was worth it. The mailbox cluster got a second camera installed, and Marcus makes a point of checking the footage weekly now. The neighborhood chat is quieter these days, less drama, more actual community updates. Colleen's name still comes up occasionally, usually when someone new moves in and asks about the infamous pool chair lady, and the story gets retold with a little more embellishment each time. I do not mind. It is a good reminder that HOAs only work when people hold them accountable, and that no one, not even a board member, is above the rules they are supposed to enforce. The stolen cash box from the clubhouse office, it had $300 in it, all 1s and 5s from pool vending machine collections. Colleen had been skimming small amounts for months, replacing the missing cash with fake deposit slips so the ledger looked balanced. The audit firm found the discrepancy when they compared bank statements to the ledger entries. Colleen tried to claim it was an accounting error, but the bank records showed she had never actually deposited the money. It was in her storage unit along with everything else, bundled in rubber bands and stuffed in a manila envelope labeled petty cash. The board voted to file a separate complaint with the district attorney's office, and last I heard, Colleen was negotiating a restitution agreement to avoid formal charges. The deputy who took the initial report stopped by a few weeks later to close out the case. He said investigations had decided not to pursue criminal charges for the package thefts because most of the items had been recovered and the victims did not want to press charges. But he said the cash box theft was a different story and that Colleen was likely going to face civil penalties even if criminal charges were dropped. He also said I did a good job keeping my cool and that a lot of people in my situation would have escalated and made it worse. I thanked him and asked if he dealt with HOA disputes often. He laughed and said more than you would think, and that Riverstone was actually one of the calmer ones he had seen. That did not make me feel better, but it did give me perspective. I hope the rest of your day is peaceful.